Keepin It Real with Russ on CBS 17 Plus.
Happy holidays, everybody. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. You've got great holidays throughout December. And you may be driving all around wherever you live, showing your kids or your wife or your husband, just enjoying the holiday lights and the beautiful neighborhoods that are all lit up to celebrate. And you're like, man, oh man, I would love to live in this neighborhood. And there's a for sale sign. Oh, wait, where did that for sale sign go we saw last week? There are a lot of those conversations in cars when you're driving around. Isn't that right, Sean Smith?
Absolutely.
Sean Smith, my friend with Society Real Estate, is back with us for a fourth time, our fourth month. That's exciting.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, Russ.
I'm glad I haven't driven you off.
Not yet.
So let's talk a little bit about the number one thing that's happened since I last saw you, which is this 0.25% drop in mortgage rates.
Yep.
A little mixed message we're getting from the feds in terms of what 2026 is going to look like, whether there'll be one or just a few.
Yeah.
We'll certainly have a new Federal Reserve chair by the time we meet, maybe next time.
Come May.
So let's talk a little bit about whether there is movement because of these 0.75% that we've seen since we first started talking.
I wish I could say that there was. It's if there is, it's so nominal that it really doesn't matter. Interest rates are still hovering at 6.3%, 6.25, 6.3, somewhere in that range. And we've seen the 0.75 basis drop over the previous months, and it really hasn't made much of a difference in the actual mortgage rates. We tend to see a little bit of price improvement coming into the drops, and then it corrects the following days. And so it's been the vicious cycle. And at the end of the day, the Fed fund rate doesn't control mortgage rates, and I think that's becoming more and more apparent to everybody as we continue to move through this.
Well, as you said last time, it's so built in.
Absolutely.
And expected.
It's built in and expected, and honestly, more tied to where people are putting money into bonds and treasuries, and that's really what's affecting your mortgage rates, not what the Fed is doing. And Fed Chair Powell, he gave a really good speech this past week, and went into the bigger issue with housing isn't in the interest rates, and that a quarter point, half point, even a 3/4 point additional basis cut is not going to make a difference, and it's because we have an underlying supply issue.
Which we are not immune from in Central North Carolina at all.
Not at all. We could absolutely use more housing. We could really use a lot more affordable housing. And so we're not impervious to it. We're just like the rest of the country. I think our market sustains a little bit better, and I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's still prevalent here.
One of the things that people start to get worried about is when their house has been on the market for a long time. Mm-hmm. 5 months, 6 months, then 12 months is up. Mm-hmm. People question, why is it not showing? Why is it not selling? Yep. Many times there's really no real reason. It's a lot of reasons. And some of it is just bad luck. Yeah. But people tend to sometimes take it off the market for a couple months for a refresh.
Absolutely.
But those numbers are pretty high, and I want to look at those nationally. So we're looking at, if you look at year to year, we're at 45.5%. Delisting, taking the house off the market.
Staggering number.
37.9 October of this year compared to last year. Mm-hmm. Raleigh Metro is doing better at 22.7%.
Right.
It's not amazing, but it's still a whole lot better than the national average.
It is.
So can you give me a sense, first of all, so people understand, when we talk about the Raleigh metro area, mm-hmm. what geographically is that?
Right. So what we're really talking about is the greater Triangle area, Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, and then our surrounding communities, Cary, Apex, Zebulon, Wendell. It's also our MLS coverage area, right? It's, really from the Triad, east over to about Wilson area, south into Andrew, and then, up north into Creedmoor, that type area, right?
Yeah.
That's about it. But that's really what we're talking about when we're analyzing numbers and data for the Greater Triangle area.
So why do you think we're doing better than other areas of the country when it comes to people deciding to pull it off the market?
Absolutely. I think our market has sustained a little bit better than a lot of other places across the country.
Which has been true in we're not in a recession now, but in previous economic downturns like recessions, we fared a lot better than many other places.
Much better. And I think it goes back to a lot of those key factors that are keeping this submarket so successful, right? It's incredible job growth. Incredible economic development. There's, every time you open up some type of news outlet, right, it's an announcement of, some new company coming in or headquarters being added. It's things aren't really slowing down here from that perspective, and so people continue to move here, and people need housing. So our market has done a lot better than a lot of other places in the country.
Healthcare is a big draw. Good healthcare. It's still relatively affordable for retirees.
Absolutely. Comparative to a lot of your big metro markets, we're still incredibly affordable. When you get into comparing, some parts of California and New York.
Oh, forget it.
The Northeast, it's we're incredibly affordable at that point. And so those people are moving here, and they're moving here with considerable buying power.
Are you hearing frustrations though from sellers who it's just not moving, and you're having those conversations about potentially delisting a property? What are the sellers saying?
Yeah, sellers don't need to sell right now. They're sitting on low interest rates, unless it's an emergency situation of like, we've actually moved, we've actually left the area, it
was my parents' house and they passed away, something like that.
Death in the family, a divorce, unless it's a real reason, right?
All these neighbors are driving me crazy.
Yeah, I can deal with that for another 6 months and wait for the market to improve. Right. And so let's throw it up at a price that maybe it'll sell, and if it doesn't, we'll pull it down. It's people just aren't as worried about it. And, and that's a big thing too, is a lot of our sellers have an unrealistic price in mind. And, they're not willing to do what it takes to get it sold today.
So what about the psychological counter argument to that, which is let's lower it. Let's start lower. Mm-hmm. And maybe we can get 3 or 4 offers that get us closer to where we really wanted to be in the first place. Because that can happen. It does happen.
It does. It's funny. I have a young couple that I've been working with for the last 3 or 4 months, and they're very picky, and they know exactly what they want. What they want is exactly what everybody else in this market shopping at that price point wants right now. And every single property that they pick to action on is multiple offers, and so it's absolutely happening. And those people who are willing to put in the work to get the property presenting well, and then also price it right, you have that opportunity to move a home in a weekend. That's not unrealistic right now. What we're seeing a lot of though is the dreamers that want to market, put the home up at 10%, 15% over what it's truly worth right now, in hopes that they'll get it. And some of them are, but a lot of them are, after 90, 120, 180 days are ultimately pulling those off the market. And we're seeing those in the numbers. That's not a normal statistic.
What I'm seeing too, which I'm sure you're going to agree with me, is that, you see a number of these people who bought a couple of years ago when there was nothing on the market. People were paying ridiculously over what they should be paying for something. Right. And now they're stuck with that mortgage or that massive down payment, or they pay cash.
Yeah.
And they want the same thing. Right. And they ain't getting it.
Right.
In many cases.
Very difficult to recoup that, especially if you overpaid with some of those, bidding wars and things that we saw post-COVID.
So what do you tell those people? I mean, I know I was talking about the psychology of it all, but you have to sort of play a little bit of a psychologist when you're talking to folks, right?
You absolutely do. And I mean, this is probably the first time, and I think we talked about it last time, is first sign of a buyer's market that we've seen here in 10 plus years.
A long time.
It's been a very, very long time, right? And so you have that conversation. One is, with your buyers of, hey, let's go get some deals, let's find the deals, but then on the seller side, you're having to have more realistic conversations, those more down to earth of, hey, this is what it's really worth and where we're actually likely going to, be able to move this property today.
So let's also talk about valuation decline. I mean, we're sort of talking about that now quite a bit. How are we doing comparatively to other places?
Again, Raleigh is, kind of a shining star. We're starting to see some cracks of depreciation, but I think overall, most of our metro areas, when you analyze the data at the end of the year, we're still going to see a slight appreciation. Is it the 5, 7, 10% that we were used to seeing over the last 5 years? No, absolutely not. It's marginal, but it's still there.
Is it frustrating for people who are out there that, I'm sorry, I just interrupted you, but
No.
is it frustrating for people who have to, have their house valued, to get a mortgage, and it's not quite hitting where they need it to be because the market's not really showing it at this
Absolutely.
point?
Yeah. I mean, certainly, I think people, trying to refinance today or do a cash out refi, probably having some realizations.
Some appraisal anxiety, we'll call it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that'd be very common these days.
So what are you seeing in terms of, I know we talk about this every time, but I always want an update on this because you also sell a lot in more rural areas outside of the urban area of Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. I feel like that's still moving pretty well. If it's within an hour.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen much of a slowdown in our outer submarkets. I mean, even getting into the, Roxboroughs and Anger and, Wendell, Zebulon, Spring Hope, those are markets that are still moving very, very quickly. And I think people still are, we're seeing still some of that post-COVID trend of people wanting more space, more privacy, more of that rural lifestyle. And so, yeah, absolutely, it's not slowing down in our surrounding communities.
I got another question for you. What about empty property, that people want to buy just to build? How's that looking?
Vacant land?
Yeah, vacant land.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's opportunities. Vacant land here in the, in the city of Raleigh, for instance, it's not available, and if it is, it's extremely, extremely expensive. Lots in downtown Raleigh, 0.1 acre lot would be $250,000 to $500,000, right?
Yeah.
But I can go to go 40 minutes out of town, 35, 40 minutes out of town, and I can find, same size lot for $25,000, $30,000, $40,000. And so there's absolute opportunities for that type of stuff. And, I think the builders who are taking advantage of it, are probably seeing a lot of wins.
Are contractors busy?
A lot of contractors are very, very busy. I think you've seen a big slowdown with a lot of your bigger national builders. Those top 25 builders in the nation. Lennar, Pulte, D.R. Horton, those types of builders. I think they've seen a pretty significant slowdown. I think your more local custom builders, the guys who are building specifically for individuals. I think they're doing very well. There's plenty of people wanting to invest in this market, and they see the opportunity with new construction.
Incentives. Are they
absolutely
really pushing those incentives?
Builders are throwing incentives. I tell people all the time, if you are buying a home today and you have any interest in new construction, now is a great time to do it. They are doing rate buy downs and included features and closing cost, and I mean, really, they are throwing everything they can at it to help you get into a home.
All kinds of stuff because they want to move on to the next thing and they don't want to take this at a loss.
100%. Yep.
Which is also a struggle if you're a current home buyer or homeowner rather who's selling and you've got, a 5-year-old house. You want to sell it and they're building a similar one, same builder.
For less.
With
warranty and included
and brand new
and lower interest rates and
what a quandary that would be.
It can make it very, very difficult, right? And oftentimes we find that the used home doesn't really compare financially to the new construction home anymore, because of the incentives and the features that they're throwing in.
And then there are all these things we could do to make these things to incentivize the buyer as the seller.
Right.
You got to be flexible now.
Yeah, very flexible.
All right.
Very flexible.
We got more to talk about. We're going to take a quick break.
Sounds good.
We'll be right back.
Keepin' It Real with Russ on CBS 17 Plus.
Everybody, we are back with my friend Sean Smith. Things Real Estate. Keeping it real.
Love it.
Do you love keeping it real?
I do.
You love being here?
This has been really, really fun. I've never had the opportunity to do a podcast, and so this is, these last few months have been kind of my intro into it, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Good. Acre by acre, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about red tape out there.
Sure.
Cutting the red tape. that's always a frustration for people. What are the biggest challenges in terms of red tape for buyers, sellers, new construction, all those things?
Yeah. I think sellers probably have the biggest challenge right now. I think sellers are really having to put the pieces together better than they have in many, many years, right? They're having to go forward with, painting and really prepping the house and all that. And then I think they're having to get right with the prices. The realization that they're not going to get what they could have just a couple years ago, is harsh, and it's something that people are having to accept. So I think on the seller side, that's your biggest demon, right now, or biggest demons is you're really having to put the effort in, and then you're having to price right. On the buyer side, it's price, it's compression. The market is really compressed. Interest rates are high. The cost of living is high. Insurance is high.
Sure.
It's all of the things associated are currently high, and so buyers are really having to figure out how to manipulate everything to make it work into their monthly budgets.
Well, last time we were talking, when it comes to red tape, that it was getting a bit frustrating in terms of getting things closed because of the government shutdown. Government shutdown's over. Is it still happening? Is it catching up? Are you back to where you're normal? Okay.
Yeah, back on track. We're not seeing any further delays from the government shutdown. All of that is really, really positive. And honestly, I think I'd probably even go as far as saying that, on the mortgage side of things, we've seen things probably moving a little bit smoother here lately. Yeah. And maybe it's just, a little bit less volume, right, that they're doing. And so they're a little more attentive to deal by deal. But I'd say things are actually getting better on that side.
I want to go back to the seller for a minute because it's whiplash all over the place with these rates, with all sorts of things, right? Having your package ready to go, your pre-approval, having all your financials in order, and it makes a big difference in timing, in being able to get in and out and get it and your bid accepted. Yep. You're not waiting for a market, another change in the mortgage rates. The other part of that is if you're going in and there are multiple offers, you better be ready right that minute.
Absolutely.
If whether it's 2 offers or they're 10, which I've seen before, and you have 2. And some people have cash, some people don't. If you don't, there's a lot of paperwork to get done.
A lot of paperwork.
So talk to me about what they can be doing today if they decide to start looking, and they're going to take out a mortgage next year.
100%. I always tell people, whenever somebody comes to me and they're just starting this process, we can talk about the housing side of everything else, but really that's an afterthought, after conversation, because all of this always has to start with how are we going to pay for the home. So I always tell people, one, get right with your own personal finances first, and then go talk to a mortgage broker. If you're seeking a mortgage, right? If you have the ability to pay cash, that's a different conversation. But every single person that's ever trying to buy a house, go ahead and connect with a mortgage broker. Even if you're not quite ready, that mortgage broker can take a step back and help you put the tools in place to prepare you down the line. And mortgage brokers are great at that. They can look at your credit. They can look at your financial situation. They can tell you exactly what you need to do within your financial situation to be able to buy a home.
Things like tax returns you need, things like,
paying down debts,
making sure that you've got, your last 3 paycheck stubs. Yeah. All of these sorts of things should not make you lose track,
right?
And get behind before you walk in the bank, and then before you walk in your office,
right?
And before you walk in to look at something you really, really want.
Yeah, have your ducks in a row, have your pre-approval in place, know exactly how you're going to pay for that home. Your real estate agent can certainly help on putting together estimates of what your closing costs are going to be, and what it's actually going to cost to own that home. But at the end of the day, it's your responsibility as the consumer, as the buyer, to have your ducks in a row financially. And if you can do that and do it well ahead of time, you are going to have such an easier process of buying that home.
You touched on this briefly when it comes to mortgages, paying your debts down. Mm-hmm. People might not realize that you will pay a different rate if your credit score is 100 points lower than the average American. Oh, yeah. Or if it's 100 points higher than the average American, or 50 points higher.
Right.
All of this makes a big difference in the calculations. And we talk a lot about dropping mortgage rates or mortgage rates going up. We talk about the prime rate. We talk about the mortgage rate. But all of us pay something different, really, depending on your credit score.
Yeah.
So
100%.
how does that work into the calculation that a bank makes?
Yeah, I mean, it's all risk-based, right? So the bank sees lending money to anybody as a risk. And so whatever their risk tolerance is going to be reflected in the interest that they receive to do that loan. And so, one of those steps of getting with a mortgage broker early on is they will tell you what you need to pay off or what you need to do to help even get that credit score up so that they can get you into a top tier to get the lowest interest rate possible.
And you can always talk to a financial advisor, someone with your bank. If you're going to pay a couple of $100 just for somebody to say, here's what you need to do. You think it's worth it?
There are so many resources. And like I said, a good mortgage broker will help you to put a plan in place to help you achieve what you need to achieve. And maybe they take a look at your situation and it's, hey, if I could get 20 points on the credit score, I could get them into a top tier versus a mid tier. And that's a half a point in mortgage rate. And I mean, that ultimately could be, a couple $100 a month in monthly payment they're saving. And so those types of strategies and getting well ahead of it, I don't think you can really start too early with the financial preparation to set yourself up to purchase a home.
Do you ask people to please have a pre-approval ready before you take them in a home?
Absolutely. Unless it's somebody that you already know their financial situation well enough that it's not a concern, I feel like it's a waste of waste of an agent's time to go out showing properties to a consumer that they don't know is qualified. If it's somebody you've sold 3 or 4 homes to, their financial situation, you've been down this path before, maybe it's a little bit of a different conversation, but I always advise agents on, within my company, get that pre-approval first, and then you also know what you're shopping for.
For people who are watching and don't really know what a contingency is, it's when someone says they make an offer on a house, you sign a contract, but you're not going to close on that house till you sell your own house. That used to be a big thing. Is that really even a thing now, as competitive as it can be? Or is it more of a thing now than it was 2 years ago because some things are sitting on the market so long?
2 years ago, it was almost non-existent, right? When we were in the crazy competitive times after COVID, you were not getting contingencies done. Consumers would ask for a contingency and their brokers would basically say, that alone is going to take us out of this competition, take us out of the negotiating power. So it hasn't been a thing. But here recently, the last, 12, 18 months, we've absolutely been getting contingencies done, whether it's home sale contingencies or job contingencies. People are being much more open to those types of deals these days.
How much time are they willing to give someone? That's another thing. It's one thing if it's your house is already under contract, or it's going on the market tomorrow in a very in-demand area. It's another thing if it's been sitting there already for 6 months.
Right. A lot of time it's dependent upon that home to sell, right? And we can look at the data around comparable properties that have already sold or, whatever, to really kind of get a pace of what that market's doing. And so a lot of times the agents are working together to figure out, how long should it take to sell that house? And then that's kind of where they pad the contingency around it.
So once we get through the doldrums of winter, which seem to last sometimes till March and maybe February, excuse me, what are you looking for in the spring? What are the key factors you're waiting for from the feds, from job growth in North Carolina, from maybe by then we'll have more numbers coming from the feds in terms of unemployment rate, new jobs, layoffs, all those sorts of things play into everything. So what are some of the key things you're looking for?
I think 2026 has the ability to be a really exciting year from a real estate perspective, real estate news perspective, no matter what, right? New Fed chair come May. That's inevitable. It's going to happen. Our President Trump has, he has the ability to, to create that or to put that person in that position. So I think it gives him a little bit of control that he doesn't currently have over the Fed. And obviously he wants to see lower interest rates. Our government's throwing out lobbing 50-year mortgages, assumable mortgages, a lot of different things to try to make an attempt to correct or increase the housing market. And so I think some of those efforts have the potential that we could really see a robust market come spring.
A lot of fingers crossed, right?
A lot of fingers crossed.
Because that also impacts people working.
It does.
It impacts you.
Yeah.
It impacts people in banks. It impacts people who build things that help build houses,
Yeah.
people who build houses, the coffee shop down the street where they're waiting for the construction to finish, or the coffee shop down the street where 3 houses are for sale.
Right.
All of this matters. Are you hopeful?
I'm very hopeful. I feel very optimistic about the market that we're in, and especially being here in Raleigh. I find gratitude every day in finding our news is a lot better than what
So many other places, right?
It really is.
There's so many good things.
There is.
And we have so many things to sell. And I don't mean like literally sell. I mean, as selling points. We talked about this, but it's like, how many lists do we end up on all the time for top whatever?
Yeah. I love it.
It's good stuff. I hope it is a fantastic new year. It's been great these last 4 months to finish out 2025 with you. Thanks for hauling in. I know I was a little on edge when you got here because a little stressful day. But Sean's really good at talking me down.
There we go.
He's so smooth. No drinks though. We can't do that in this podcast.
No.
You've got something to drink, but I think it's all fine.
It's just bubbly.
Just a little bubbly something. Oh, I think that was a free advertisement. Sorry, I don't think we were supposed to do that, but cheers to you, Sean.
Thank you.
Have a great new year. We'll see you around the corner.
Keepin' It Real with Russ on CBS 17 Plus.